Hello, everyone. I hope you are all doing good today. Today, we're going to talk about two more deeper points about arguments. The first one that we will discuss is basic assumptions or underlying assumptions. The second one is a hidden motive. We will talk about this one by one, and I will refer to one of the articles that we have read before as an example. All right, first of all, what is basic assumptions? Basic assumptions basically includes everything that the writer believes. It includes what the writers consider to be the law or the principles of what he writes. So far, we have mostly started with main idea, right? After the main idea, we go into the supporting ideas. In an argumentative essay, the supporting ideas can include the evidence and warrant. In an exemplification essay, the supporting ideas can include the examples or instances and the explanation for each of them. So that's what we have mostly been doing, right? We start from the main argument, something at the top, and then supporting ideas. Now we are going to the basic assumptions. Basic assumptions are at the very bottom of things. Sometimes we don't even know uh, the basic assumptions of the writer in the text. We cannot really tell what the writer believes to be uh, the law of everything. Now, to be clearer, let me give you an example or a visual of what basic assumptions basically are. Okay, so far, as I mentioned to you, we have mostly dealt with the main idea and supporting ideas. Now we are going to the basic assumptions. It is at the very bottom. It is often not seen. You can only tell the basic assumption after reading the entire essay and try to figure out what the writer might believes or what the writer might hold to be the truth, what the writer might uh, consider to be the law of everything. If I can make an analogy, it will be like a building. The basic assumption is the stairs or the foundation, yeah? And the supporting ideas are the pillars or the columns. And the main idea is the roof. You can see the main idea only by reading at a glance. Maybe it's like seeing it from the distance. And if you go closer and if you go deeper, you can find the supporting ideas of a text. But if you read thoroughly, you try to let it sink and think about it, you might also know the writer's basic assumptions or underlying assumptions. It is often not narrated in the text. Let me give you an example. Basic assumptions can be religious views on certain topics, such as gender relation. It can also be political consideration related to certain issues in the society. It can be scientific perspective. It can be economic assumption, and so on and so forth. Well, there are so many assumptions, and actually, you can tell a writer's basic assumption by knowing who the writer actually is. If you know the background of the writer, you might know what the basic assumption of this writer is. However, we cannot really be sure about that as people keep changing, right? So, what we can always rely on is the text. If you know the main idea, if you know the supporting idea, then you can try to guess the basic assumption, the way this writer reasons, the way they think about things. One example that we can try to use is how our government or how governments in the world deal with coronavirus pandemic. Some governments use purely scientific perspectives in solving the case, such as by uh, lockdown, full lockdown, and by providing people with food or basic supports because of the lockdown. That's a purely scientific, purely scientific uh, assumption or purely scientific consideration in solving the case. However, other governments, they do not use fully scientific perspectives. They might also consider economic perspectives, as their country is not rich enough to be able to provide everyone with food if there is a lockdown. So what they do is they make restrictions so that people's movement can be restricted, limited, but some people can still work because otherwise they cannot get uh, anything to eat, right? So that's an example of a basic assumption in social life. The main idea is I want to solve COVID-19 by full lockdown. Or in another government, I want to handle COVID-19 by, restriction of movements, but not lockdown, so that people can still work. And the basic assumption of these two are different. The first one, the basic assumption is scientific perspective, because the only way to stop the spread of the virus is by, by staying at home and not moving at all. As for the second, they use the economic perspective, in which if you don't move at all, then some people might not get food at all because their job cannot be done online. So that's one example that I can use. Now let's move on to the second topic, which is the hidden motive. Hidden motive is, it's an interpretive thing that a critical reader, us, can infer based on the main argument, the supporting ideas, and the basic assumptions that we can infer, and many other things, including the possible audience of this text. You know already about the main idea, right? And you also know about supporting ideas. And just now we talked about basic assumptions. Now, the last thing that we need to find out is the audience. How do we know the audience of a text? Well, you can simply find out where the text is published. And if you have discovered the magazine, the newspaper, or the television where the text is published, then you can try to figure out who might watch this news, who might read this newspaper, and so on and so forth. So basically, this is something that you can do by just seeing where the text is published or where you find the text. The second thing about hidden motif is that they are usually hidden, not said at all by the writer. Sometimes the motive can be the opposite of what appears on the surface, but that's a different point, right? I'm not making you try to believe in the conspiracy theory or anything. No, I'm just going to ask you to try to find the motive based on what you can already see. I'm not going to make you find the motive that has no implication at all, that has no science at all. We here rely on the main idea, supporting ideas, basic assumption, and the possible audience of the text. So that's what we are trying to do. Now, to be clear, let me give you one example. So last week you read this article, right? You read about 5 sport related activities that we can do during the quarantine. And you have given me your opinion about it. You gave me your opinion about what type of essay it is and what are the 5 sports and so on. And you already have given your opinion of your friends' analysis of the text. Now, let us go further by asking the hidden motif of this text. First of all, you get the main idea already. that there are activities that we can do during the quarantine that looks like sport. Okay, and you have the sporting ideas, the five types of sport that the writer here, Bill Bender, offers. Now, what is the basic assumption of this? If I may read it, the basic assumption of this is that sports can be done even without going out. Or the writer here believes that sport is something that you can do at home. Well, that's the same. But sports are, you can find sports anywhere, not only outside, but also at home. And then the other basic assumption might be things that we might consider trivial can actually be a substitute for sport. So these are the possible basic assumptions, in my opinion. Now, what about the audience? Who is the audience of this article? Well, if you see this, the media or where it is published is called Sporting News. And you have the menus over there, which include NFL, NBA, MLB, NCAA, boxing, and so on and so forth. So these are, well, American sports, NASCAR, NBA, NFL. So we know that this news is for those who love sports, and those who love sports live particularly in the United States. And third one, they are mostly for parents, right? They are adults. So these are the audience of the text: adult sports lover who live in the United States. Now, what do you think is the motive of this writer? The motive of the hidden motive of this writer? After seeing the main idea, sporting idea, basic assumption, and the audience, I would infer that the hidden motive of this writer is to tell people to stay at home. Don't go out at all. I know you love sports, but just stay at home. The pandemic is bad. And in fact, we know that the pandemic was really bad in the United States, right? And this one was written in March 2020. That's when the pandemic started becoming serious in the United States. And this writer seemed to be in the opinion that the only way we can stop a pandemic is by staying at home. Even though you like sports, just stay at home and do sports related activities with your family, especially your kids. So these are what we can analyze from this text. You can get the main idea, sporting ideas, basic assumption, the audience, and finally the hidden motive of the writer. The writer here might not say that they want you to stay at home, but the hidden motive is that stay at home. Or if you want to draw it further, you can say that the writer here supports at the time the Democrats who believed that the only way to stop a pandemic is by staying at home. All right, guys, I guess that's all from me. I hope we can practice this with the article that I have sent to you, the article about how Italians dealt with the pandemic at the early stage of the pandemic. Right? Bye.